Who is the biggest threat to the 49ers in the NFC? And as you can see, Michelle has made a change on the show that warms my old heart. We'll talk about it next. What is good, everybody? Welcome to the Gold Diggers podcast on the Gold Standard podcast and the Fans First Sports Networks. I'm Rob Stats Guerrera. That is Michelle Majuk. And before we get to the 49ers and breaking down the biggest threats in the NFC and all that stuff, Michelle, if anyone watching on the stream can see, you have a brand spanking new pair of shiny, giant, old school radio headphones, and it is warming my heart.
Yeah, and they have this huge red cord. I'm really going old school here. Also, I think they're soundproof because I feel like I can hear my own voice in these things. I don't like it, but I'm gonna get used to them, and I like the look. I'm feeling them.
I love it. Vish tries to, a lot of people try to use the stupid earbuds. They never work right. It messed up the broadcast last week. I am an old radio man at heart. So we call them cans in the business, as they say. You've got the giant cans on your head. I love it. I'm so proud of you. You're my favorite Gold Standard host now. That's it.
I'm just trying to be more like you.
There you go. It's about time. I think we can all agree. Please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, rate, review, and follow the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get your audio podcasts. As we sit and wait for Brandon Aiyuk or something to happen with Brandon Aiyuk, who, by the way, continues to like Steelers content on Instagram, apparently.
Yeah.
I know. I thought that would warm your heart. We thought we would dive into the NFC, do a little opposition research, because next week's show, training camp, will be underway. We'll have stuff to talk about and react to. So this is sort of like our last show in the quote-unquote dead period, the 40 days of death, as I like to call it. So we thought we'd take a look at some of the other teams in the NFC. By the way, Diego Figueroa, YouTube channel member, shout out to you, says All-Pro Mimosa Michelle, not Mimosa Michelle today.
Drinking a Bud Light, baby.
It's Bud Light at 11:19 a.m. Central Time.
I like to have something while we record this podcast. I don't know why. It warms my heart to talk about the 49ers. I just feel like I'm chatting with my best friend talking about football. I like to have a beer with that, Well, normally I like to have a mimosa, but I don't have one. So I'm drinking a Bud Light.
And let's be honest, we're overdue for a beer together. We got to hook that up at some point. I am contemplating a Gold Standard retreat in the off season next year, where we all meet up and, talk about work for 10 minutes and then just do a bunch of fun stuff together for the rest of the time.
Sounds like a blast. I don't think we have to wait till next off season. Let's get it now.
I know, you're right. All right. Talking NFC competition, going to touch on a few teams. I figure it makes the most sense to start with the Lions because they played the 49ers in the NFC Championship game. And this all kind of started, by the way. I got this idea yesterday because somebody about the Eagles, or somebody tweeted something about the Eagles, and I said the only way the Eagles are going to get to the Super Bowl next year is if they don't have to play the 49ers in the playoffs. And that started a whole firestorm that I was not expecting. Eagles fans that want a lot of credit for a game where the 49ers didn't have any quarterbacks. So that's how the whole thing started. We'll get to the Eagles eventually. But do you think, just big picture, the Lions are overall a threat to the 49ers in the NFC this year?
They absolutely are. I mean, we can't forget they were up by 17 points in the first half against the 49ers. They were threats against them last year. Just the 49ers pulled it out. They got the win. But there's really not much change going on in this group. If anything, they've added some pieces to their secondary, which they needed to do, and Carlton Davis and Terrion Arnold. Those are nice adds for them. I guess Terrion Arnold is a rookie, but he was one of the better corners coming out of this class. So I think overall, if anything, they should probably just be a better team going into what now their third season under Ben Johnson, and with this whole group together. And then they added those two great rookies last year. They're coming into their second season. They're a team to be scared of. They've won 22 of their last 30 games, including the playoffs. That's really good.
The big problem for the Lions was their defense. With the offense that they had, they should not have struggled to win as many close games as they did. They were not blowing people out because their defense was awful. They were good against the run. They were very good against the run. but they couldn't stop the pass at all. They were 30th against the pass. They were 31st in yards per attempt. 74% of all yards gained on the Lions came through the air. Their defense was pitiful. And like you said, I know they've made some changes, but that's not encouraging for a team that's trying to get to the Super Bowl when you're going to have to go through, we would think, the 49ers or the Packers or the Cowboys or hell, maybe even the Falcons, who knows? But there's no bad offensive teams in the NFC that are a real threat. So if you're the Lions and you're going to get to the Super Bowl, you got to fix that.
It's great. They're 16-1 in games where they allowed fewer than 24 points over the last two seasons. Best record in the NFL in such situations. So as long as their defense doesn't 24 points is a good amount, or more than 24 points is a good amount of points to allow, and they do it because their pass defense is so bad. But maybe this corner they got in the first round is a stud. Maybe they've made the right moves. We'll see. I still think the best case scenario for them is that their pass defense is middle of the field. I don't think they're going to all of a sudden become from the worst to one of the best. Their best hope here is to get around 16th, 17th, 18th ranked. And I think that would make a huge difference because their offense is so dang good, especially at home, that if their defense can just be mediocre, they're going to win a lot of games.
And of course, they play the 49ers in week 17 in San Francisco. I'm fascinated to see that matchup. In terms of how they match up with the 49ers, look, I know that their offense is good, but when you put Jared Goff under pressure, he is not the same quarterback. And I think the 49ers are still going to be able to do that if they have to next year. If you played the 49ers and the Lions again, I don't think the Lions would have a huge lead like they did in the NFC Championship game. I think that was kind of a bunch of circumstances that came together in the first half. So I don't look at it as the Lions, they're going to beat the 49ers because they should have beaten them in the NFC Championship game. They are a threat for sure, but I don't think they have a complete team yet. They're still sort of building their roster. I don't think they're quite there just yet.
I'm with you. And I agree with you. You could play the NFC Championship game 10 times. I think the 49ers probably win 9 of those 10 times, if not 10 out of the 10. I think that first half was just everything was going wrong for the 49ers. But I still think the Lions are a good team. And they're not a complete team yet because of how different this team acts at home and on the road, right? You gotta be good on the road too. It can't just be in the dome at home. And then also you brought up Jared Goff under pressure. His passer rating dropped by 55% or 55 points last year when he was not pressured compared to under pressure. That was the highest, obviously, drop off in the NFL last year because it's 55.8 point difference. That is a wild difference. Yeah, Jared Goff, when you give him time and he's not under pressure, he's a good quarterback. He's accurate. He can get the ball where it needs to be, but put him under pressure, man. But the Lions have a good offensive line, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal for most of the season. But once you get into the playoffs, you're gonna meet some hard defenses.
They are going to start fast next year. They're going to get off to a hot start. Over the first 8 weeks of the season in 2024, the Lions play just one team that's forecast to finish above 500, and that's the Cowboys. They got a bunch of tomato cans early. It's the NFL's 5th easiest schedule through week 8, according to Warren Sharp. But from week 9 through the rest of the season, they play the 4th toughest schedule and the toughest schedule in the NFC. So they may start fast, but it's going to toughen up on them later in the season. I don't know if that's good or bad for the 49ers, but don't be shocked if the Lions look good early and then kind of struggle later in the year.
What's crazy is I think they only have one game outdoors this year.
I think you're right about that. Let me look really quickly.
I think it's just when they're at the Bears. I think that's the only game outdoors.
At Arizona. Is Arizona outdoors? No, they have a dome, right? I don't remember.
Maybe I was thinking cold weather.
In Dallas, in Minnesota, those are dome teams. No, they're in Green Bay.
Oh, duh. Maybe it's just Green Bay and the Bears?
And the Bears. Yep. Green Bay and the Bears. But yeah, cold weather. That's probably what you were thinking.
2 games. 2 games.
So I would put the Lions, again, and I've said this before, with Ben Johnson there, legit threat. Jared Goff without an elite offensive coordinator, has been really bad. He looked good with McVay. He's looked good with Ben Johnson. We don't know what the future holds for the Lions, but in terms of 2024, they're definitely a team to be reckoned with. Of course, the 49ers will play them. I think that game could have seeding implications in the NFC. The Lions want another shot. I'm sure they feel like they, should have won the NFC Championship game, but nobody talks about them, having to climb the mountain again. Like, that is as gut-wrenching a loss as you can have that's not in the Super Bowl. That's what the Lions are going to have to overcome. That's not nothing.
I actually have a fun stat with that loss right there. I want to be able to find it quickly. For the championship loss that they had when they're up by 17 points, teams previously had a 21-0 record when leading by 17 plus points at half in a conference championship. So they're the first team to ever do this. The poor Lions, right? Like, I do feel bad. And if they weren't playing the 49ers, I would have been rooting for them, right? Because they've never made the Super Bowl. They've had such a losing franchise. And then they had to go into that second half of this conference championship game so excited. And then you're the first team to blow that lead ever in NFL history in a conference championship game. Just wild.
And, not for nothing, but in 2012, the Falcons had a 17-point lead against the 49ers in the NFC Championship game, and they blew it. And the next year, that Falcons team with Matt Ryan, same quarterback, 4-12. I'm not saying the Lions are going to go 4-12. I'm saying maybe it's a bigger loss to overcome than some people, because I think everybody just assumes like Lions are going to make a deep playoff run again. Maybe they will, but
they have too
won't.
Explosive of an offense to not make the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs. It's too easy of a conference. Their offense is too dang good. I think they're a clear, obvious playoff team unless they have massive injuries. But we'll see if they're true. They didn't have to play very hard teams in the playoffs last year, right? Like, they played the Rams and the Buccaneers. It's not like they had to play these top tier teams in the conference to get to the NFC Championship. So they had to prove themselves. That's all.
Do you think their division is tougher than it was last year or easier? The Vikings will probably be worse, but the Packers, you would think, would be better. The Bears maybe could be better with Caleb Williams.
The Vikings really shouldn't be worse. I mean, they didn't have Kirk Cousins for half a year. And I mean, they started 1-3 or 1-4. They started with a terrible record, even with Kirk. So I don't picture the Vikings being any worse than they were last year. And they also missed Justin Jefferson for a good chunk of time as well. The Packers should be better, and the Bears should definitely be better. So, this is a harder division.
So, I think the Lions are definitely going to have to be heard from, but it's going to be an interesting ride for them this year, and we'll see if they can overcome it. All right, where do you want to go next? Do you want to go Philly? Do you want to go Green Bay? Do you want to go Dallas? Maybe we go Green Bay. We'll go in like reverse playoff order.
Yeah, let's go with the Packers here. Same division as the Lions. Now, right off the bat, if you had to pick a team to win this division, I feel like we would pick either the Lions or the Packers. Which team would you lean towards?
It comes down to how much do you believe in what we saw from Jordan Love at the end of the year. I'll say this for the Lions. I feel like at least Jared Goff was, a consistent player basically throughout the whole year. The Packers were not very good through the first, at least offensively, through the first half of the season. I would say the Packers, I guess, because I think Love's ceiling is higher than Goff's ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, Love's second half of the season was absolutely amazing. And if I'm just telling you right now, if I had to go on a pod and do Jordan Love versus Brock Purdy, I could also give the Jordan Love side and destroy the other person. I don't know how the guy, can't remember his name anymore, but went on to this debate and had nothing. I have so many things I could say about Jordan Love and how good he was at the end of the year.
Give me the reverse argument then. Stump
Okay.
for Jordan Love.
All right. Well, just off the bat in his first season as a starter, he finished second in the league with 32 passing touchdowns. And that was with a really terrible first half of the season. Weeks 11 through 18, he had an 18 passing touchdown to 1 interception ratio. I mean, like, people who've done that, it's very few and far in between ever. And then also when you're looking at him on 3rd and 4th down, he led the league in passing touchdowns on 3rd and 4th down with 21 passing touchdowns. The next closest was Patrick Mahomes at 15.
Ooh.
Isn't that crazy? In third and fourth down, like those are scary situations and those are huge moments to be in. For him to have 21 passing touchdowns. Sorry, it was offensive touchdowns, so it must also include rushing here, but 21 with Patrick Mahomes at 15. He had 10 games with multiple passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions last year, including the playoffs. The only people who have had seasons with more such games since 2020. Since 2020. I thought this was a cooler stat. I thought it was since 2000. But it's Aaron Rodgers twice in 2021 and 2020, and then Tom Brady in 2020. And then Patrick Mahomes also had 10. But he's on that list with Rodgers, Brady, Love, and Mahomes. In wins, he was really, really good. But in their losses, he was really, really bad. But so it just, what do you think he is? Is he the second half guy that he just needed time to gel with these super young receivers because they were the youngest in the league? I think each of their top 6 receiving yard leaders were first or second year players. Like, that's insane. Or is it just an incredible run and he just hit some lightning? We'll see.
That is the biggest question with the Packers, is which Jordan Love are we going to see? This is insane. In goal-to-goal situations last year, the Packers had a 95% touchdown rate. That is the highest since we began measuring that in 2000. That's absurd. That can only go down. And that's no disrespect to the Packers. It's just when you're at 95%, that is incredible. Now,
what's also insane, though, is didn't their running backs only have 4 total rushing touchdowns, or 6? I think 4. I think they're tied for the fewest. Their running backs only had 4 rushing touchdowns, I believe, tied for the fewest with the Vikings. So that's an even crazier stat that they're so good at that, and they got nothing from their running backs.
I think it's a testament to Jordan Love and also Matt LaFleur, like the play calling there. Jordan Love had 4 rushing touchdowns. He led the Packers. A.J. Dillon had 2. Aaron Jones had 2. Yeah, and then Jaden Reed had 2, but he's a wide receiver.
Yeah, so they had 4 rushing. So, that stat is insane, and maybe it can only go down, but also at the same time, if they get more out of the running backs, maybe it does stay the same. To go off of, though, they lost Aaron Jones, and Love's numbers with Aaron Jones on and off the field last year are drastically different. So that's just something to keep an eye on. And yeah, I know they got Josh Jacobs, but Aaron Jones is much better. Like, he's an elite receiving back, which that's not Josh Jacobs' game at all.
And Josh Jacobs is coming off a terrible year. Now, he was not on a good team, so take that with a grain of salt. Strawberry React says Trevor Lawrence also had an amazing second half in 2022, and he was underwhelming in 2023. Yeah, that's another thing with the Packers. Like, everybody assumes all their good young players are only going to get better. They're all going to get, like, and if you assume that, what you're saying is the Packers have the best roster in the NFL because they're super young. And if all of them are going to do nothing but get better, then I feel like you're saying the Packers are just going to have an absolute powerhouse. And it doesn't always work that way. Guys don't always, progression is not always linear. Sometimes, like, you might have a down year and then bounce back in a big way the year after.
I will say, I think I said too many nice things about Love, so I want to go back to being mean to him. So last year, he's just struggled in the fourth quarter a ton. He had nearly a 15% higher completion percentage in quarters 1 through 3 than in the fourth quarter. 54 completion percentage in the fourth quarter. That was the worst in the league. And also, like, we saw that happen, right, in the Packers divisional game loss to the 49ers on the Packers' final 4 drives. This was Love's stat line: 6 for 12 for 30 passing yards. He averaged 2.5 passing yards per attempt, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a 16.7 passer rating. I think he could have thrown the ball at the ground over and over. I think actually would have had a higher passer rating. I think that's how that works out. But so in the fourth quarter, he really, really struggled. And then also, one more thing, his stats may be very skewed because he actually did what people think Brock Purdy did. He threw under 10 air yards so many times, one of the highest in the league rate. But when he threw under 10 air yards, he had 105 passer rating, 19 passing touchdowns to 1 interception, 77 completion percentage. All you have to do is make that 10 plus air yards. So that's not that far down the field. 10 plus air yards. These were his stats, including the playoffs. A 47 completion percentage. 47. 18 passing touchdowns, which is fine. 12 interceptions. not great. 91 passer rating. So his passer rating went down by 14, but that completion percentage of 47, just when you say 10 plus air yards, that's atrocious.
Look, we like the stats that we like, and we ignore the stuff we don't like. I feel like a lot of people are ignoring that with Jordan Love. See, this is why you need to follow us here at the Gold Standard, because we give you the stuff you don't get anywhere else. Nick Ellert, YouTube channel member, says, can LaFleur win the big game? It's an interesting question. You know, he has had a ton of success in the regular season. I think he has more wins in his first 3 years than any coach in history. And then to do it with multiple quarterbacks, I give him a lot of credit. But in the playoffs, they have not had a ton of success. In 2019, they lost, or they, excuse me, they didn't lose. They barely beat a Seattle team, despite being a 4.5-point favorite. They, of course, lost to the 49ers 37-20 in 2019. We all know that one. In 2020, they whooped the Rams team, but then they lost to Tom Brady's Buccaneers. Like, it hasn't had the same success in the playoffs under Matt LaFleur.
They made 2 NFC championships. I mean, if
they got
again
by the 49ers in 2021.
Yeah. Listen, LaFleur is good. LaFleur is a really good coach. They made the playoffs in 4 out of 5 seasons under him. Like, they've made 2 NFC championship games. I think he's a good enough coach. I do. To maybe he falls apart kind of like Kyle Shanahan in the big games. I think it all lies on Jordan Love this year. I really believe that. Like, if he is what he was at the end of last year, they're probably going to win a lot of games. But also, still during that time, especially once you got to the playoffs, he's still making stupid mistakes in games. When you're looking at his interceptions, like, if they were all when he was under pressure, you can say, you know what, under pressure stats, they're all over the place. Like, you can be really good under pressure one year, bad the next year. Like, those are not steady or sticky. What is sticky is stats without pressure, when you're in rhythm. And he threw 9 of his 13 interceptions this year under no pressure, and 11 of his 13 interceptions in rhythm throws. Like, those are not situations where he was like put under stress, and that's why he made a mistake. Like, these were just mental mistakes by him.
I think if you're going to ask the question about Shanahan in big games, I think it's fair to ask it about LaFleur as well. The other side of this with the Packers, and by the way, thank you, Nick Ellert, and all our YouTube channel members. Please become a YouTube channel member. It's less than $3 a month. If you do, you can sign up to join our College Football 25 Dynasty League, which is open now and underway. Just it's on our YouTube community page. Just leave your gamer tag and proof that you signed up to be a YouTube channel member, and you'll get the info for the league, and we can join. And we're going to play for a Niners autograph. It's either going to be a helmet or a jersey. I haven't bought it yet, but I will. So if you want to do that, just check out the YouTube community page. It is right there for you. The other thing with the Packers that I feel like no one's talking about is their defense. Listen to the quarterback lineup that the Packers faced last year. And I'm not making this up, okay? Desmond Ridder, Justin Fields twice, Jimmy Garoppolo, Russell Wilson, Brett Rippon, Kenny Pickett, Tommy DeVito, Jaron Hall, and Bryce Young, okay? Wow. That is an awful lineup of quarterbacks. And the Packers defense was mid. They were 16th in yards allowed, and they were 10th in points per game allowed. And that's the quarterback lineup they faced. This year, they faced the toughest schedule of offenses. They faced the toughest schedule of passing offenses, and they faced the toughest schedule of rushing offenses. So that defense better get a hell of a lot better, because they are facing a level up of competition in 2024.
And they were 1-6 when they allowed 22 plus points last year. That's not like, so this really did fall on if the defense kept the other opponents in control, which when you're playing those quarterbacks would not be a hard thing to do. But what is wild is they ranked 20th in pass yards per attempt allowed, tied for 28th in pass touchdown interception ratio allowed, and 25th in opponent passer rating. So they ranked that low with all of those guys you just named that they were playing against. They did get a new defensive coordinator, so maybe that'll fix things, but wow, that's bad.
It better. Let's just say that. One thing that does work to their advantage, though, 8 of the 9 teams that play in Green Bay this year are dome or warm weather. The only one that's not is the Bears, and that's week 18, and that's a divisional opponent. Everybody else that goes to Green Bay is either a dome team or a warm weather team. That has to help the Packers, especially later in the year.
Oh, 100% it will. I mean, that should also help the defense any year. I mean, even if you're a
Right.
cold weather team, it's still hard to go into Green Bay and play a game in December or January before the play. Like that should have already helped them last year. Clearly, it didn't all that much, but yeah, I think the Packers fans are definitely overrating them a little bit. It's kind of wild. I don't see them as Super Bowl contenders. I think they'll make the playoffs. It will. I think week 1 is very, very interesting with them going up against the Eagles because these are two teams that I think are very close. And like, I'm just so interested to see how this game plays out and if it's close or one team kills the other. Like, I could not predict this game. I could see it going any way where the Packers destroying the Eagles destroying the Packers, it being an overtime game. It could be any of those things.
Do you think the Packers are a bigger threat to the 49ers than the Lions?
No, I don't.
Think the Lions are the bigger threat. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's fair. So we have done the Lions. We have done the Packers. Should we get to Philly or where do you want to go? Philly, Dallas, somewhere else?
Who do you think's stronger, Eagles or Cowboys this year? Ooh.
It's a good question. Let's get to the Eagles first because I think there's some juice there.
Okay.
We know the whole change. Yeah, a lot of change. We know the rivalry with the 49ers. We know what happened when Brock Purdy got hurt. The Eagles put it on the 49ers, and we know what happened when Brock Purdy didn't get hurt. The 49ers went into Philly and stomped them out. What to expect from Philly this year? I don't know because Jalen Hurts, did not look like the same quarterback last year they did in 2022, but they have changed offensive coordinators. Now they have Kellen Moore there. Is that going to help them? I honestly don't know. I think Kellen Moore's stock was a little higher going into last season. He leaves the Cowboys and Dak Prescott plays like an MVP without Kellen Moore. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I think Kellen Moore's stock was definitely up because, we were also excited for him to go to the Chargers. That didn't pan out. I know there were so many injuries last year, but even when Herbert the offense just looked off. And I'm surprised Kellen Moore so quickly got another job, but this offense was not clicking with Brian Johnson. So they had to make a move. We'll see if it's better with Kellen Moore. They made a move on defense again because they lost both their OC and DC after making the Super Bowl, which that's a tough place to be in. Added Saquon Barkley. That's interesting. And then they did add a lot of pieces to their secondary, which was absolutely terrible last year. Second worst in the league in passing yards per game allowed, only because the Commanders had a historically bad season in that area, or else they would have been worse. But they did add a lot of pieces. They're going to be young. So we'll see. We'll see if their defense can be better.
I think the offense, like Jalen Hurts, he holds the ball and then he throws short. It's like, if you're going to hold on to the ball, get a deep pass. But when he held the ball between 2.5 and 3.5 seconds, his air yards per attempt was less than 7.5. So that's a really bad combination. You're not playing on time. You're not playing on schedule. You're stressing out your offensive line. And then when you do throw the ball, you're throwing it short. That's why their offense was a struggle for them, especially in the second half of the year last year.
I think a big part of that could have been the system, though, because he threw 14 of his 15 interceptions inside the pocket last year. He was really bad inside the pocket last year. But the year prior with Shane Steichen, he led the NFL in passing yards per attempt and passer rating inside the pocket and only had 4 interceptions inside the pocket compared to 14. So I'm hoping it's just because I like Jalen Hurts. That's why I'm saying hoping. I'm hoping it's just the system. But that doesn't mean that Kellen Moore's system is going to be any better for him. I just think Steichen's a very, very good offensive coordinator, and he had him in his amazing 2022 season. Also, remember, Justin Herbert had him as a rookie. He's never looked as exciting as he has as a rookie. And then Anthony Richardson last year in the 2 games he did play, he was supposed to be really raw, and Steichen still got him to score all these touchdowns and look pretty solid. So I just think Steichen's a really good coach.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And you're right about the system. I think the Eagles were right to make a change at offensive coordinator. 28% of the passes last year for Philly were behind the line of scrimmage. Almost 30% and you have Devontae Smith and AJ Brown and Dallas Goedert. You've got legitimate weapons there. move the ball down the field. And I know that they made those changes, but the one change they didn't make was Nick Sirianni as head coach. I have zero faith in Sirianni. I completely lost respect for him last year when it came out that the Eagles floundered down the stretch because Big Dom wasn't there to babysit him on the sidelines. Like, everything that Philly has told you this offseason is that it's everybody else's fault except Nick Sirianni, right? 2 straight years, you got new coordinators there. They were a disaster last year. To me, that has to fall on the head coach, and Philly has changed everything except the head coach. They brought in a bunch of players, new coordinators. I think that maybe the problem is Nick Sirianni.
Yeah, I just don't understand that the historical collapse. I mean, something was off there. They were 24-2 in the regular season with Jalen Hurts as a starter from 2022 till week 12 of 2023. 24-2. And then all of a sudden 1-6 from week 13 on. And they everything was so bad. They had a minus 82 point differential during that span, minus 436 total yard margin, minus 8 turnover margin. Like, something happened in that locker room and they just stopped trying. They were not trying in that wild card game against the Buccaneers. They showed no signs of care at all. And I don't know how you don't put that on the head coach. Like, who else would it be?
That's right. I mean, it has to be him. And you could, like, that was the most, that and Miami getting beat by the Chiefs in the freezing cold were like the most predictable playoff outcomes. Like, nobody I know picked the Eagles to beat the Buccaneers. You could just tell by the way it went. They beat one team down the stretch in their last 6 games, and it was the Giants. And then they lost to the Giants in week 18. Like, it was just hideously bad. They got punched in the face by the 49ers, like Lee said, and it just unraveled. They got punched in the face by Dallas. They lost by 3 to Seattle. They beat the Giants. They lose to Arizona, and then they lose to the Giants again. It was awful. I have the Eagles significantly behind the Lions and the Packers in terms of threats to the 49ers in the NFC.
Because of what we saw in 2022, I have a hard time getting off of them. I do think they could get it back. Maybe it was just a Super Bowl hangover as well, but it's harder to say that when like the first 12 weeks went so well. But when did they play the 49ers? Was it week 13? Was it the start of that collapse?
Yes.
Maybe
the Niners broke them.
Yeah, maybe that was it. Maybe it was like the Super Bowl hangover maybe didn't hit until that happened. And they were like, we don't have it. Like, we're not going to, we don't have it. We just got destroyed. We're not the top tier. Like, I think that just completely deflated them, completely deflated their locker room. It just lost them all. I do think they're going to be back to a really good team next year. And yeah, that's all I have to say there. But I guess Jason Kelce retiring could be a huge hit on them as well. I still think they're going to be a top tier team.
That's an interesting thing because the tush push, we know, obviously, was a big part of their offense. They had a ton of success with it. They had a 92.5% conversion rate on the tush push.
Yeah.
The rest of the NFL had a conversion rate of just 81.5%. So basically 10% difference there. The teams that didn't have Jason Kelce, and of course, Jalen Hurts too. He deserves credit as well. He has giant friggin' legs. But if they are less successful on that, I don't know, maybe it does hurt their offense a little bit. In the past 2 years, Michelle, the Eagles have 3 rushing attempts by running backs on the 1 yard line. And they didn't have any last year. No Eagles running back got a rushing attempt on the 1 yard line last year. When they got there, it was Jalen Hurts. And I get it. It was smart because it worked, but it's just hilarious.
Do you think they'll run with Saquon more? I don't even think Saquon's that good of a running back. I'm not going to lie.
I don't think he's as good as people think he is, although he is going to a much better situation.
He's great in space, but like as a every down running back running up the middle, like that doesn't do it for me. He loses yards so much. But when you get him into space and he has room to work, then yeah, he's great in that area.
And the Eagles' offensive line is light years better than what the Giants had. The Giants' offensive line was brutal. So that will help. But like people that are saying like, oh, it's going to be like Christian McCaffrey to the 49ers. Whoa. Like, let's slow down here before we start throwing craziness around. Christian McCaffrey to the 49ers is arguably one of the best trades in NFL history. He has been that damn good. And he's the reigning offensive player of the year. How about we let Saquon go out and do it before we start talking about that?
Yeah, and Christian McCaffrey had massive years with the Panthers. Like Saquon Barkley, he had that awesome rookie season, but since then it's just been typical running back years.
So we'll see about Saquon. I think he'll be better. I do have questions about the Eagles, just Hurts and Sirianni. They could be a threat. They have made a ton of changes. Vic Fangio is their defensive coordinator now. He's the former 49ers defensive coordinator who, he gets a lot of credit as, Shanahan's scheme is like the offensive invoke thing right now. Well, Fangio's defensive scheme has that on the opposite side of the ball. It's very popular around the league, gets a lot of credit. But he was not well liked in Miami last year. A lot of Miami Dolphins players had some negative things to say about Vic Fangio on his way out the door. So, take that for what it's worth. I have no idea how much that, is real and how much that's just guys who can tend to be disgruntled and blaming other people for their poor performance. I have no idea, but that is a thing that happened.
And I wonder, like with Darius Slay and Bradbury, did they just fall off the face of the earth? Did they just hit that age cliff and fall off, or was it the system again? And they'll be better next year because they were so good in 2022 as a duo. Like, how did the fall off hit so quickly for them? They do have younger guys now to compete against, so maybe that will put some fire under their booties. But yeah. I am a little scared of the Eagles. I'll say that.
They could be better. They've made a bunch of changes. CJ Gardner-Johnson's back. Yeah. Cooper DeJean they drafted. We'll have to see. But with corners, like you said, sometimes that you fall off a cliff fast. It does not get enough credit. It is such a friggin' hard position to play. You can't touch the receivers at all this year. You're playing against some of the freakiest athletes on the field. You don't know where they're going. They do know where they're going. You can't touch the quarterback at all this year. Like, being a corner is freaking hard, man.
That would be my least favorite position because you have no idea where they're like, that's such a hard position. And you get so much hate if you make a mistake because it's so glaring, right? Like, you could make a mistake as a linebacker or as a defensive player and like some small mistakes people won't notice. You can make the smallest mistake as a corner and everyone's going to see that. It's a tough position to be on. But yeah, they got Quinion Mitchell too in the first round, and then also Cooper DeJean in the second, CJ Gardner-Johnson, like you brought up. I also think Jalen Carter is going to be a beast in this league. He was already so good as a rookie.
So that's their pass rush completely fell. Their pass rush went from number 1 in 2022 to 23 last year. Like, that's a huge drop off. Their defense was second worst inside the red zone and 30th on third down. Like, clear areas for improvement for Vic Fangio. I mean, just be average and you look like a hero. Like, you've made this huge jump. So that'll be a key factor for the Eagles as well. But I agree. To me, I think that they are not as big a threat as the Lions or the Packers. I need to see it from the Eagles. Like, I'm not a believer in Sirianni and Jalen Hurts. Now, got another team we need to discuss on today's show. The old enemy, the Dallas freaking Cowboys. They've had a lot of regular season success. They've had a lot of divisional success. What do we think about the Dallas Cowboys in terms of their threat to the 49ers?
It's just wild how they've taken this offseason. It's like they don't even realize the season's starting soon. They have signed 2 players at free agency that are projected 2024 starters. And one of them is Ezekiel Elliott, who's a 500-year-old running back. And the other is Eric Kendricks. Fine. That's a fine pickup, stolen from the 49ers. I liked when the 49ers signed him. So when they stole him and got him instead, I was sad. But they lost significant pieces this year, especially on the offensive line, and they're just not doing anything. They're not even paying the guys they do have. They have so many contracts coming up over the next year or two, and they're just sitting on their butts. I don't know what the Cowboys are doing. We know they're going to be a good regular season team because they always are. They have a 36-15 record in the regular season since 2021, second in the NFL. And then they're going to suck in the playoffs like they always do.
And they didn't just lose to the Packers. They got smoked by the Packers the week before. I know they ended up scoring a bunch of points in garbage time to make the game look closer. They got absolutely humiliated.
No part of that game were they close. No point. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, point.
It came just from everywhere against the Packers. And it was like, I remember watching with glee. I was like, great, the Cowboys are going to be out. This is awesome for the 49ers. I was cackling during that game.
Well, we just know they're always going to be out.
So in terms of why maybe you don't want to believe in the Cowboys, well, they played the easiest schedule of defenses last season. 11 of their games were against defenses ranked in the bottom 12 of the league. This year, they're projected to face the 10th hardest schedule in the league. So I know Dak was great last year and their offense was great. They're going to face a tougher level of competition this year. It's going to be on them to improve it.
It's just wild too. Like the Lions and the Cowboys are such good teams at home and then kind of just very average at best on the road. But the Cowboys at home have a 16-1 record over the last 2 seasons, 8-9 on the road. Like,
wow.
They averaged 34 points per game at home over the last 2 seasons, 23.9 on the road. Like they're another team that take them out of their home and their comfort. They just are not the same team at all. And that matters in the playoffs, unless you have the number 1 seed and get to just stay home. But they were actually home during that Packers game. So that those stats weren't including the playoffs, obviously. But yeah, they did get a home game against the Packers and still got destroyed. So they're just a sucky playoff team.
Lee Ving says Cowboys waiting for Trey Lance to develop. That's funny and mean. So, of course, I like it on the show. Look, the Cowboys defense has benefited a lot from turnovers. They have been great at generating turnovers, but when they don't generate turnovers, they're vulnerable and they could be due for some regression. They have had a double-digit turnover margin for 3 years in a row. Every single team that finished with a double-digit turnover margin for 3 years regressed in their 4th season. You combine that with the fact that Dan Quinn is gone, Mike Zimmer is in at defensive coordinator. They are spending way less on defense than they did last year. Last year, they spent the 10th most on defense. This year, 27th most, according to Warren Sharp. So unless they got a bunch of really good, really young, really cheap players, Cowboys defense may be about to take a step back.
Yeah, you got DeMarcus Lawrence aging. You have, I mean, obviously Parsons is going to be great. We'll see if Deron Bland can be good in, again this year. I mean, I know that he had a gazillion interceptions last year and so many pick sixes, but those can go up and down. And you're right. Like they have been benefiting so much from takeaways, from turnovers. Like without that, they would not be thought of as one of the top teams in the league. And if those keep up, then sure, they're still going to be great, but those can go up and down. And if they struggle with turnovers at any point, their defense is not going to look nearly as good. But a crazy stat here. So interception leaders over the last 3 seasons. So since 2021, it goes Trayvon Diggs at 15, Deron Bland at 14, Justin Simmons and Rasul Douglas also at 14. But Diggs missed 15 games this past year, and Bland wasn't drafted until 2022. So both of those guys missed a whole season during the span and still are top 2 in the league. That's kind of crazy.
That is wild, man. That's an incredible stat by you. No, I shouldn't be surprised at this point. That's sort of what you do. I can't imagine Dak Prescott playing better than he did last year. And if they couldn't even get to the NFC Championship game last year, you're telling me they're going to go further with Dak playing worse? Now, of course, it's always possible, but the contract situation with Dak is a thing. It's hanging over his head. Now, I know Stephen Jones recently said that they've had good discussions lately, and maybe that gets done. But if I'm Dak, I got to feel like a little ticked off. We're sitting here talking about how Brandon Aiyuk's got to feel with the 49ers and their discussions and whether he's going to be mad at the team. Dak Prescott has already gone through all of this with the Cowboys, where they've forced him to play out his contract before giving him a new deal. He has that horrific injury. He comes back. He plays great. And they still have yet to give him the new contract. I would not blame Dak Prescott at all if he was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just play somewhere else next year. He
should leave them because they really just want him to take this deal to be a Cowboy. They really just truly believe that's something that means something.
Right.
Just guess how much money the Cowboys have spent so far on free agents this year, just so far up to this date.
$6.50.
It's close. $16 million. Now, it's the lowest in the league by far.
Easy.
There's teams that have spent $200 million up to this point, and they have spent $16.9 million on free agents up to this point.
And that's after Jerry Jones said they were all in.
All in, baby.
He
They were
literally said
all
all in.
in.
And it's Eric Kendricks and Zeke Elliott.
And
That's
then
your
they take a tackle that we didn't even like in the first round. I can't even think of his name right now. Tyler Guyton. He was my least favorite of the top left tackles prospects this year, and he's going to have to start right away because they lost Tyron Smith and they lost their center. Like they're going to win regular season games, but man, they did not build a good team to make a playoff run at all.
Lee Ving says Dak to the Steelers in 2025. How do you feel
Yes,
about that?
I love that.
If I were you, I would love that. Yeah, it feels like the Cowboys are just content to play this thing out. They didn't fire Mike McCarthy. They're keeping McCarthy. They've basically done nothing. They haven't signed Dak. Cowboy fans are usually, puffing out their team and, talking them up. And I feel like if you talk to a Cowboys fan, they're just like, what are we doing? There is no enthusiasm for the team this year. There's none of that. It's just like, we're not even trying is the feeling.
I mean, they're literally not trying because they're not doing anything. I would love to know what the front office is doing.
Yeah.
What have they done? What have you done
this offseason? Did you plan a couple trips somewhere? Like, what are you doing? Yeah, the Dallas Cowboys are definitely way lower down in the tier in terms of threats for the 49ers in the NFC. So we have talked Lions, we have talked Packers, Eagles, Cowboys. Who is the next biggest threat to the 49ers in the NFC for you, Michelle? Is it the Rams? Is it the Seahawks? Is it the Falcons who may be better? Where would you go next?
It's crazy because you sent me a list of teams you wanted to talk about. And I was like, there has to be a team he's forgetting, right? Like there has to be one. And I go I'm like, maybe I'm just not thinking of it. So I go and look at the list. I'm like, maybe this will refresh my memory and there has to be a better team. The NFC is so weak. It's so weak. So I guess I'll say the Falcons because of Kirk Cousins. But am I really scared of them? No, not at all. I'm really not. Because you got Kirk Cousins coming off an Achilles tear. Maybe if Cousins wasn't coming off an Achilles tear, I would be a little bit more nervous of him joining this really an offense that could be great, right? But we have not seen a quarterback play in week 1 of the following season after tearing an Achilles since Trent Dilfer did it. Actually, we haven't seen another quarterback start a game at all in his career after tearing his Achilles since Trent Dilfer did it back in 2004.
Really? Now it's an injury that's more rare than say like an ACL. And you got to take that into account. But yeah, it's Achilles injuries are tough, man. We don't have the same level of expertise with them as we do with ACLs because we've had so many ACLs across all sports, not just football. The Achilles is a different thing. It's a tougher injury to come back from. Now Cousins is not, I mean, he's a pure pocket passer. So
yeah,
of all the injuries he could have had, a leg injury is not as significant as an arm injury for him. I think he'll be better just because he's in a better environment. In Minnesota, he had just
Kevin O'Connell's so good.
Yes, but the weapons that he has in Atlanta, I think he could be such a boost to all of them. For fantasy purposes, I am like, yes, Kyle Pitts, yes, Bijan Robinson. Like, I think that he's going to elevate them, assuming they can protect him. And Atlanta has a good offensive line.
Yeah, they do. They have a better rushing offensive line, though, than passing offensive line. I think the big difference here is he's not going to have his Justin Jefferson or his Stephon Diggs or his Adam Thielen. So now you have to make sure that maybe we don't know what Drake London is yet, right? I mean, he's only had the worst quarterback, so maybe he can be great. He's a big body, but neither of these guys, Pitts or London, score any touchdowns, but also the Falcons didn't pass any touchdowns. But Pitts and London are tied for the fewest receiving touchdowns in the NFL among wide receivers and tight ends. Since 2021, among all guys who have at least 140 receptions. They're tied with Tyler Conklin, tight end for the Jets. So, I do think, obviously, they should have more with Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins randomly is 5th in the NFL history in passing touchdowns per game. Wild stat to me that Kirk Cousins that high up.
NFL history.
Only guys who average more passing touchdowns per game in NFL history, minimum 100 games played. Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, and Tom Brady. Kirk Cousins is 5th on that list. Isn't that insane?
One of those names is not like the others.
Insane. But yeah, I mean, I think Kyle Pitts could be much better. His catchable target rate was the lowest in the league last year. It was pitiful. I think he can be really good with Kirk Cousins. We'll see on the rest of the guys.
That sound you hear is Rams fans screaming right now. How could you not name us? You're sleeping on us. The disrespect with the Rams.
Let's talk about the Rams then, because I really, the Falcons, they'll probably win their division, but if the 49ers face them in the playoffs, I don't think we're worried, right?
Agreed. Let's talk Rams.
The Rams, divisional opponent. They were very good at the end of last season. They finished 7-1 after their Week 10 bye. Their only loss was to the Ravens, and it was a close loss in overtime. And then they had the close loss against the Lions in the wild card round. So they could be a very good team. It's just, I don't know why I'm not worried about that.
They have an excellent coach in Sean McVay. They have what I think is the best quarterback in the NFC in Matthew Stafford. And when you've got that combination, you're not going to be terrible. Now, they lost Aaron Donald, and I think that is a huge, huge loss. Yeah. But this team was 3-6 last year going into the bye week. They went into the bye week losing 4 out of their last 5. They lost to the Eagles. They lost to the Steelers. They lost to the Cowboys. They lost to the Packers. They were 3-6 in the bye. And then out of the bye, they only lost 1 game the rest of the year, and that was to the Ravens in overtime on the punt return. I believe it was a punt return touchdown in overtime where there may have been a penalty that wasn't called. They got it together in the back half of the season. And if we're going to sit here and say, look at the Packers, what they did in the second half of the season, well, the Rams had a hell of a second half too.
No, they really, really did. And Matthew Stafford came along as well in that second half. I mean, one of the best quarterbacks in the league from weeks 12 on. And then even in their wild card loss, I mean, he had a really good game. 367 pass yards, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 120 passer rating in their loss. Like, he did what he needed to do. They just ended up losing a close game. He has the playoff experience now with the Rams. Like, they could be a scary team.
I still think Matthew Stafford is really, really, really good. He's arm talent. Everyone likes to talk about that. He's right up there with Mahomes. He's throwing no-look passes too. Like their
offense will be good. It's their defense. Is their defense going to be good enough?
Yeah, I don't know. They loaded up on defense in the draft. They took 5 guys on defense with their first 6 picks. So they're trying to get better, but the loss of Aaron Donald is a real thing. And they face a brutal schedule of defenses in 2024. They play the most difficult schedule of pass defenses by far, including 7 games against the top 10. So it's going to be on Stafford because your defense is not going to be as good. So you're going to have to score more, and you're going to have to do it against tougher competition.
Yeah. Now, their defensive tackle they took last year in Kobe Turner. He had a great rookie season, 9 sacks. But also he had 22 quarterback pressures when double teamed last year. Only Quinnen Williams from the Jets had more such pressures. So like he got it done as a rookie. He was a really good rookie. Like you said, they brought in guys out of this draft too. They're just going to be young. I do like that they brought back Darius Williams for them as well. I think that's a nice pickup to bring him back. He's a good corner. Should help their passing defense a little bit. But they also lost their defensive coordinator in Raheem Morris. So it's like, yeah, they actually from what they did last year, we were surprised that their defense even held up to what they did. And it wasn't anything amazing, but now they're losing their defensive coordinator. How big of a loss is that? That's a huge question as well.
This is more of a fantasy question, but Kyren Williams, I've seen Sean McVay get his running backs to be fantasy monsters. And I know he knows how to use a running back. What do we think of the ceiling on Kyren Williams?
I mean, the ceiling is what he did last year. He's the running back 2 in points per game, only behind Christian McCaffrey. So that's his ceiling. I think he still finished as a top 5 guy, even though he missed like 5 games, like overall. Kyren Williams should be a beast. They did draft Blake Corum, though, in the 2nd round. That was interesting pick to me. But when Kyren Williams went down, they picked up Darrell Henderson off the couch. Like he wasn't on any other team. They picked him up and they literally fed him the ball and Rice Freeman. So maybe they really wanted some depth there. But Blake Corum is a good enough running back. He'll get in. But Kyren Williams, he's going way too late. And he's not going late, but he's being underrated in fantasy drafts right now. He's going after like the top 10 running backs. He's being picked as like the running back 12. And that's running back 2 in points per game last year. I love Kyren Williams in drafts this year.
1,350 yards from scrimmage last year in 12 games with 15 touchdowns. Like Sean McVay knows how to run the offense with a really good running back. So just keep that in the back of your mind. But that's it. I mean, I'm interested to see what Mike McDonald does with the Seahawks, but I think it's unfair to say like you have to come in and be awesome right away. I think it's going to take him a year or two to kind of get things right. I don't believe in Geno Smith as a quarterback. I never will. I know he makes some pretty passes. I get all that, but there is, as I keep saying with Brock Purdy, like there is more to playing quarterback than just throwing the football, and some of that other stuff. I don't trust Geno Smith there, so I'm not going to put Seattle as a threat. I think the games will be tougher because I think that Kyle Shanahan had completely cracked the code on Pete Carroll and knew exactly what to do to kick his ass. So I think it's not going to be like it normally was against the Seahawks since Russell Wilson left, but I'm not putting them up there just yet.
And I think the Cardinals offense will be really solid this year with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Kyler Murray a year removed from the ACL tear. It's just they didn't do enough to fix their defense this year. Their defense is going to be one of the worst in the league again.
Yeah, the thing I don't like is that right now it appears that there are no tomato cans in the division in terms of head coaches. Like when Cliff Kingsbury was there, it was like, give me a break. Like this guy he's in over his skis. So now it's like you look at in terms of coaches and divisions, you got Shanahan, you've got McVay, you've got McDonald, and you've got Jonathan Gannon, who I think Jonathan Gannon, he's not an idiot, which the Cardinals have had idiots there. There are no like easy games essentially in the NFC West.
Yeah, well, you can't cry too much because they get to play in the NFC. So,
well, look, I didn't put them in the NFC. This is beyond my control.
Can the Steelers please move over to the NFC? That'd be great.
Yeah, I mean, God, that division, that's the toughest division in football, AFC North.
If the Steelers were in the NFC, would they have been on this list?
No. Did you not see week 1 last year? Did you not see what happened?
Fine.
Sorry. Maybe when Dak goes to the Steelers in 2025, you can talk about that.
Well, Russell Wilson is a 49ers killer.
He is. And thank God I don't have to witness those anymore. A decade is enough punishment, I think. So that's our rundown of the NFC teams and the 49ers. I know it was more of a non-49ers show today, but don't worry. Training camp opens next week, and we'll be back on Friday next week, breaking it all down, talking heavy 49ers. Just wanted to take this last show to sort of, look at the competition. It never hurts to do a little opposition research.
Absolutely. And I already had it done for work. So it was great for me. Nice and easy.
There you go.
Today.
I like that. I like this comment too from Baziman, who says having Mike McDonald, in the division will only help Kyle and Brock because it'll force them to develop counters to that defense with repeated exposure. I don't hate that. I'm not going to lie.
And just because McDonald was able to be a really good defensive coordinator with the Ravens doesn't mean he's going to bring that over to Seattle. I mean, he has a whole different players. He doesn't have Kyle Hamilton. He doesn't have Roquan Smith. Like he's not going to have some of these beastly players that he had on the Ravens. So it's just not going to be exactly the same.
That is also a good point. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with Mike McDonald not being quite as good, but also being good enough to help the 49ers evolve kind of thing.
And how many times do we see really good coordinators, though, not be good head coaches, and then also their side of the ball that's supposed to be good, it's not nearly as good because they're doing 2 jobs now. So, like, we don't know what the Seahawks are going to look like. Could be amazing, could be terrible.
Kind of like the guy the 49ers hired to be their assistant head coach this year, Mr. Brandon Staley.
Yeah. I don't want to talk about
favorite. That. I know he's your favorite in the league.
I'm going to pretend like he's not on the team because with him I almost said roster, but with him on this team, with the organization, Brandon Staley's not going to win a Super Bowl. So I hope he gets fired before then.
Wow. He can't even win just being on the coaching staff.
I just don't think he has that luck for him.
Really?
I just feel like he gives that a bad aura.
Because somebody on this show in their bold prediction, I think picked the 49ers to win every single game this year.
I know. That's why I'm pretending like Staley's not on the team. If I don't remember it, it doesn't count and he can still win it.
Right. I think that's what we've learned as content creators. If I don't remember it, it doesn't count. Yeah. Well put. Fish and Chips says Michelle is spot on. I don't know if he's referring to your Brandon Staley take or your other takes. But anyway, before we go, I do have to ask, because you are young and hip. It's Friday. What do you got going on this weekend?
I don't really have anything for once.
Wow.
There is kickball, but we're not going because my wife has COVID. So we're really
no.
we're stuck in the house. We've been stuck in the house all week. Lame.
That stinks.
Yeah.
That stinks. Well, I know I'm going to be playing college football 25 like all weekend. Again, if you want to sign up for the Gold Standard Dynasty League and College Football 25, head to the community page. You'll see the information. Just become a YouTube channel member and leave me your gamer tag, and I will send you the invite. We're going to kick it off on Wednesday. So we're giving you a little time. Decide who you want to be, practice up, and we'll kick it off on Wednesday. But go there, sign up. There's only 32 spots because that's the most that the game will allow us to have. So, and then you'll have a chance to win some autographed 49ers gear as well. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, rate, review, and follow the Gold Standard Podcast Network wherever you get your audio podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. We need reviews. I know it was off season. People didn't want to do it. Training camp starts next week, people. Leave us your reviews. Ask Michelle your fantasy football questions. I know you're dying to answer them.
Oh, yeah. I'll answer anything that's asked. Put it in there.
Even if she's leaving our fantasy football league this year, leaving us high and dry, you can still ask your fantasy football questions to Michelle. I hope you have a good night in. A little Netflix and chill for you, perhaps.
Yes. Watching Lost. I've never watched the full thing of Lost.
Oh, nice. All right. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
Bye, y'all.